Today we're going to learn how to make a single layer linoleum cut. My name is Cameron Peterson. I'm co-owner of Funhouse Press with Annette DuBord, and I also work here at the Rourke Art Gallery Museum as the exhibition coordinator and facilities management. Today on our journey to linoleum cuts, first thing we're going to need is you're going to need a sketch and then also a blank linoleum block. And usually I found the best way to get your sketch the same size as your linoleum block is cut your linoleum block and trace it onto your sketchbook. And then you can draw the design and you're ready to go. And then after you get your sketch done, you need a copy of your sketch that you can cut out. And today for the transfer, and we did a different class on different transfers at the Rourke, so look at the other video for transfers. I'm just using a carbon transfer. So it's just a piece of carbon paper in between there, but you'll also need a Sharpie, a pencil. You'll need gouges, which you can find at any craft store usually. And the Speedball one is handy if you're just starting out because it comes with 4 or 5 different blades you can experiment with. A putty knife or a piece of leftover mat board, and then, well, a utility knife if you need to cut your linoleum down, and scissors to cut the paper. And then you'll also need paper that is a little bit bigger than your actual linoleum cut. And then you'll also need this registration sheet, which I will show you how to make a little bit later. So the first step, after you have your design, you have it cut out, then I usually tape it down. And then with the carbon paper in between there, I usually just trace the lines. So after you have your design traced on there, what you kind of want to do, especially if you're doing a multiple layer, is you probably will want to go over the lines with a Sharpie marker. That way you can ink it up and proof it. And then after you proof it and clean your plate, the Sharpie line will still be there. And so when you start cutting now, and the first rule of cutting is never cut towards your hand. Usually what I do is I use my other hand to kind of hold the plate, and I rest my wrist on top of the other one so I can just cut. And usually I don't try to cut right up to the line. I cut in an area that's a little bit further, and then I kind of shape up to the line to get it really good and clean. Because sometimes when you're cutting right up to the line, you might slip and cut over your line. And what we're removing here is we're actually removing the areas of your plate that won't print. So everything you're cutting away will not print when you go to print. So, and here's also a bench hook. If you're not comfortable like this, and a bench hook, you can put your pieces down and rest them against the bench hook so you can make sure that none of the pieces are, you can make sure that your hand isn't in front of your blade or your gouge. Now, once you have that cut, what you want to do is start a registration plate before you start inking anything up. And the registration plate, I just took a simple piece of paper. This is a very simple T registration, so it's not perfect every time. But what I did is I drew an X in the middle of the paper, and then I drew a box where my plate will rest. And it will line up like this. And then also the paper that I have bigger than that, I've marked the paper on the back, and so it has a line on the top and a line on the bottom and then a little X. So when you do your registration, the line on the top with the top X, and this is just to keep things lined up, just to have a reminder in your head, because sometimes you get carried away with printing and you put the plate in the wrong way, because usually I mark the bottom of the plate with an X too. It's kind of worn off here, but there is an X there. And so that's why you put the little X in the corner, so then you know that the X lines up with that X, that lines up with this one. And then when it comes to printing, you just line it up with the line in the back and your little crosshairs on the top. And that's only if you want to get the piece directly in the middle. Now when it comes to printing, when it comes to taking, if you are using ink and it comes to taking it out, take it out really flat if you have a jar. You don't want to sit there and gouge, because when you gouge the ink, it creates little holes and then it dries up around the little holes and you end up with very chunky ink in the end. And then you want to lay down an ink slab. And then with your brayer, and you can use a pasta roller, or I've tried with different things like a paint roller, but usually brayers are pretty good, and you usually can pick them up at any craft shop too. So, and when you're rolling out your ink, you want to roll forward, pick up, and come back. Roll forward, pick up, and come back. You don't want to sit and go like this, because then what you're doing is you're adding a lot of ink to just one area of your brayer. So you want to keep on going kind of in a little oval shape. And if you can hear it, you want to stop it before the texture is a little bit more than orange peel texture. But you'll also hear that hissing sound, which is really good. It kind of sounds like tearing apart Velcro almost. Just and then when you roll up your plate, you can roll any way you want to. Then when you put your brayer down, you always put it down with the wheel up. You put your X where the X goes. Then you line up your T. And then usually after I have it there, I lightly just kind of press it onto itself before I start burnishing. Now I'm using a really light block paper. You can use the paper, your basic printing paper if you're working at home. There's other things you can do. You can actually get fabric ink, and since you already have a design, they have fabric ink that you can just, if you want this design on your clothes, you can print it on your clothes. You can make and there is your design, your print. And I mean, since you already have it, you can kind of use it as a stamp. Say you want to make wrapping paper, you can just stamp it, ink it up in a different color, stamp it, ink it up in a different color, stamp it, and it should be fine. So, and that is Linoleum Cut 101. Thank you, and have fun making art.